Hi, my name is Jay Sugarman, and I want to welcome you to Innovation Showcase. The main purpose of this ongoing series is to inform viewers about exciting innovations and creative individuals across the fields of business, science, technology, education, and the arts. Today, via Zoom, we're fortunate to have as our guest Chris Miller. Based in Calais, Vermont, just outside Montpelier, Chris is a highly accomplished sculptor whose work has been featured in many public art settings, museums, private and commercial commissions. During the program, we're learning why and how Chris's interest in sculpting came about. We'll hear about his growth and development in the field, view and discuss some of his incredible creations, and in the process, come to better understand and appreciate how Chris goes about creating his unique and extremely captivating artwork. Let's start by meeting Chris and then hearing all about, as well as enjoy some of his artistry. Welcome, Chris. So delighted to be able to be here.
Good morning, Jay. Thanks for having me.
A couple of weeks ago, I had the good fortune to come across an article about you and your work, was fascinated, eager to hear more and have you inform viewers. But before we jump right to that, I think it would be of interest if you just share maybe a little bit more about your background, artistic, professional interests, please.
Let's see. I started out fairly young at this. This is my 49th year. And I started out, I had an interest in wood carving. So I just picked up some tools and taught myself as best I could. I was also in school taking drawing and sculpture classes at the time. And I did that for many years. And then at maybe almost 30 years ago, I added granite and marble into the mix, and now I do all three of them. And I'm just about at my 50th year next year.
That's incredible, incredible. What appeals to you about working in these different mediums?
Well, they're first of all they're really fun, but they each have different characteristics that lend themselves to different kinds of things. Like for outdoor work, granite is absolutely the best material. For highly detailed things, wood works really well for interior things. Marble is really great for figurative work because it has kind of a translucency. So like a skin, you can portray skin very well, things like that. But everybody asks me which is my favorite material, and they really are all just wonderful for different projects.
Speaking of projects, and I'm sure it varies from project to project, but could you give us a little sense of the process you go through? We're going to enjoy some of your work shortly, but the sort of the mental framework, sketching, designing, what goes into some of your work?
Um, Starts out with just the idea of what I want to make. Either a client comes to me with a sort of a basic idea, or in an ideal thing, they come to me and say, "We love what you do. What can you do for us?" So you come up with a idea, and then I guess just visualize it. They say like 20% of the population can sort of think in volume, and I must be one of those. So I can just kind of get an image in my head of what I want to build and kind of see it in three dimensions. And then I usually do some just rough sketches. I'm not the best at drawing, but do some rough sketches just to show a client what I'm doing. And then I usually would work it all out in clay first,
Mm,
because in stone or wood or marble, or granite, um, it's all subtractive. You start with a big block and you work your way down, and you only have one shot at it. So
yeah.
you work out sort of the basic blocking of it in clay, because if you go too far, you can add more clay in. You can sort of start with nothing and build clay up, or you start with a block and work it down either way. But you can try things out and play with it, and then adjust and sort of work out all the details beforehand. And then there's a whole bunch of techniques and things to either enlarge it or go sort of a one-to-one model, anything like that, with different measuring devices and things. And then there's like wood carving chisels, or in stone, there's pneumatic hammers and diamond saws and carbide chisels and all sorts of tools.
Wow, fabulous. Well, we're fortunate to have some images of your outstanding work. So let's take advantage of them and hear a little bit about the background. This wonderful artwork is in the Vermont State Capitol,
Mhm.
um, known as either, I think, Agriculture or
Mhm.
Goddess Series. Could you share how this commission came about? And I know we don't have time to hear the incredible details, but a little bit about the project from beginning to end.
Okay. Well, first of all, that image is wood, painted to look like marble. It's
Mhm.
on top of a wooden dome, so it couldn't handle the weight of a stone sculpture. But traditionally, this is the third version of it, and the two before that had been done in pine were rotted out, and we did this one in mahogany, and then painted it to look like marble. So that commission came about 2018, I believe it was.
Mhm.
The state put out a an RFD, request for proposals, whatever it was. Anyways, I teamed up with probably the best sculptor in the state, Jerry Williams in Barrie,
Mm.
and he made the model for this, a quarter size model in clay and then in plaster, that I then took and enlarged it. And the piece is just under 5 meters tall, so
Mm.
almost 15 feet.
Yeah.
And it took we only had a window of, I mean, they took the old one down, they regilded the dome, and then this one had to go up by snowfall in November. So we had, just the one season to build it. And it was, i I think it was 1,200 hours of carving, plus, 300 or 400 hours of gluing up the block and everything, on top of Jerry Williams creating the model, which took months to do ahead of time. So
Incredible.
big project, really, lots and lots and lots of fun.
And it was one that the public had the opportunity to watch you working.
Yeah, part of our proposal, and one of the reasons I think that we got it, is my association with the Vermont Granite Museum. They were nice enough to allow me to bring a wood carving in there, because first of all, they have a 10-ton bridge crane, which is really, when you're working on something
Wow.
that big, you need to be able to move it around and flip it over and do all sorts of things with it. But it's open to the public every day. So we had a program where people would come to the State House and they'd see a video on it, and then they would be directed to come down and visit. And we had 4,000 or 5,000 people over the season come in and watch it being carved, and it was great project.
That's fabulous, fabulous. Much more we could hear, but for the sake of time, we're going to move on to this exquisite design here that you call Paradox, and located in Texas, I believe.
It's in Galveston, and the title is a really, really bad pun, and I apologize for it. It's that's 3 meters, so almost 9 feet tall.
Wow.
And it's one single piece of berry gray granite.
Mm.
And the clients were bought a lot next to their house in Galveston, and turning it into a sculpture park. And they wanted the first piece to be sort of a portrait of themselves. And both of them are vascular surgeons. So I used their actual hands. I did a casting of their hands and then enlarged it in granite. And they're both doctors, so paradox, bad pun, I apologize.
That's fabulous. Oh, incredible. And I know you've done other hands before. It's an interest of yours as far as model.
It's interesting because I've always loved doing hands. I mean, you can express, you know, anger and sadness and joy and anything with hands. I would say almost as well as you can with a face.
Mm.
So, I mean, you can have an angry fist, you can have a gesture of kindness, all these kind of things. And I had done hands since the very beginning in wood carving. And a really short story. one of my inspirations back in the early days was an artist called Frank Frazetta. I always liked the old illustrators and things. He was kind of a comic book artist. He did
Mm.
the original Conan comic book covers and everything. And he had all these expressive hand things. I went to his museum. He's dead now. I went to his museum in Pennsylvania just last year.
Mhm.
And I was walking through there with one of his grandchildren who was explaining all these things. And there was a painting of a hand with these figures crawling all over it. And I kind of stopped in my tracks. And 48 years ago, I did that exact carving of a hand from that
Wow.
painting.
Ah,
And I was like stopped in my tracks. I had forgotten all about it. And then I thought back, and there's dozens and dozens of hands in different wood sculptures and marble sculptures and granite sculptures over the years. I, and the one we're going to look at later, Vermont Academy of Arts and Sciences, has several relief carvings of hands doing projects. So I've been able to carry that along for many, many years in different projects.
fabulous, fabulous. Well, let's move on to one of your current projects right here that
Yeah.
you're referring to. Can you share a little bit about the intent in this, how it came about, what
Yeah,
you've been
that's
able to do so far, where it's headed?
that's the Vermont Academy of Arts and Sciences, and that's going to be installed this year in Vermont. And that's that image is half of the sculpture. It's 14 feet high, about 5 feet deep, and 28 feet long altogether. And it's all berry gray granite. And the idea was that it was one of those dream projects where instead of them coming to you with a committee saying, you know, here's the design we want and everything, they came to me and said, particularly, we love the kind of projects you do and how you design, especially the way you use hands to express things.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so there's a number of relief carvings in the entablature that have hands creating different projects. So the columns are holding up the entablature, and there's relief carvings of different disciplines of arts and sciences,
Yeah.
and a pediment on the top. And the idea, and the other half of it's on the ground on an angle, like it had fallen down. And they came to me and they said, so how do we express, where the arts and sciences all came from, and have sort of a historical thing, and then have so the idea was go back to ancient Rome and Greece and create ruins, and
Ah,
and there's a lot of very fine detail in the entablature. So the idea is that you approaching it from a distance and you see ruins without the detail, and it sort of lures you in, hopefully, to take a closer look. And as you get closer, you see it's Academy of Arts and Sciences, and then you get even closer and you see the different disciplines carved on both the entablatures. And then on the backside are so far 180 fellows over the years have been inducted into the Academy of Arts and Sciences. So their names are all carved in stone on the back of it. So hopefully it brings people in for a closer and closer and closer look. It was a wonderful project to design. And the other really quick thing is that those columns, they're coming out of granite. I wanted to leave the raw granite on the bottom of them. And the idea was that, a column that size would be 40 feet tall, and you're just seeing the top of it. So how do you do that and make it look like it's fallen into the ground, or it's been covered over with dirt and everything? And one of the inspirations for that was I wanted people to walk up to that and look at the column and just immediately know that it's 40 feet tall into the ground. And one of the inspirations was Charlton Heston in the end of the Planet of the Apes, where he's riding down the beach and he sees the torch of the Statue of Liberty coming up through the sand. Immediately, you know what's underneath all that.
wow, that's fabulous.
I wanted to have that kind of like, oh yeah, that's all part of a bigger thing.
Oh, terrific
Kind of crazy.
connection. Oh, in all your work, really admire and appreciate your creativity that goes into it, together with the craftsmanship. Just so appealing. What a dynamic combination. Want to move on to this incredible undertaking, which is developed over the years. We're enjoying the first one right here. A little bit about the origin, and then we'll hear about the development of the stone trucks you've been designing.
Well, that image there is sort of embarrassing because it's really sloppy. That's right in front of my studio in Calais. I did that about maybe 15 years ago. I was like between projects, and I've always liked to build stone walls and do stone, structures. Um, so I wanted to kind of do a stone structure that was also a sculpture at the same time. And I had like a month in between projects, so I got a bunch of stone and built this one truck, and it just sat in my yard because you drive around in Vermont and you see old trucks at farms, and there's trees growing up through the hood and things, and they just become part of the landscape. And I wanted to kind of create this little roadside oddity that people drive by and like, that's kind of weird. What's that all about? I want them to like slam on their brake. And sometimes, and this is a little tiny dirt road in the middle of nowhere in Maple Corner. And, there's traffic jams sometimes. People stop and then other people stop. Like, what are they looking at? And people getting out, taking pictures. It's just this odd thing. And that
Oh,
sat there, and people would stop and write articles about it and take pictures and things. And then somewhere on the internet, it appeared in something. And then all of a sudden the phone started to ring, maybe 12 years later. And then people were asking me to build stone trucks. So
yeah.
I've
Well,
started traveling around to do more.
yeah, we'll hear at least about one of the commissions shortly. And here we see you working on the one in Calais. A
Yeah.
little bit about that process, like what you're doing. I see you have a model in the foreground there.
Yeah. A little styrofoam model I just put together. That was just, I just threw that together. It was just a very simple design. And that's just built right on the ground. No infrastructure. They've
Ah,
gotten much more complex and much more detailed as time goes on, as we'll probably see on other ones. But that one was just built on the ground, and it's held up pretty well.
you
Moss.
know, how does living near the Rock of Ages quarry influence the development of your work?
Well, one of the reasons I liked going from wood to stone is that, like with wood, if you want to do something big, you can't start with like a giant tree because it's going to crack. So you have to laminate up different pieces, and you have the lines of the wood going through it, and it kind of interrupts it all. Where if you want to do something big, I can go up to the quarry tomorrow and pick out a stone the size of a school bus, and I'll have it delivered to the studio in the morning.
Wow.
Any size I want, any shape, and it's consistent from one end to the other, with no flaws. It's really beautiful
Mm,
material. So if you want to do something really big, and I really like working big, either you take stones and pile them up, or you take wood and glue it up, or you go to the granite quarry and you get whatever you want. So
that's
it
great.
inspired me to do bigger projects, which has been great.
Well, let's look at the advancement from that first stone truck
Mhm.
to one we're seeing here in Georgia.
That's in McDonough, Georgia. Yeah. And it's client called me up. It was during the very beginning of COVID, and I couldn't get into the Granite Museum to work because it was closed.
Hmm.
I had just my studio at home, and a guy called me up and said, "Hey, can you come down to Georgia and build one of your stone trucks?" I said, "Yeah, I guess." It's 99 degrees and 1,000% humidity in the middle of summer, just insane. But yeah, that was a little bit more refined of a truck, and it's on a little more compact of a base.
How about a little bit about the logistics? I mean, you get the call and you say, sure, but I mean, just scratch the surface a little. What's involved about shipping, coordinating? I mean, we see these waterfalls here coming out of the truck. How did that come about? A few more words, please. Fascinating.
Well, this is in front of a business in Georgia, and he wanted a water feature to match. He had another business with a water feature, and then he saw trucks online, and he asked about could we make it into a water feature. So projects like this one was fairly simple, and the subsequent ones were more and more involved. So you start out, you have to some of them have been actual portraits. So you fly to Texas or Arizona, different places, measure the exact truck that the people have, and then come back, reverse engineer it. And I'm a Luddite, so I just do everything on graph paper. I don't use computers, any of that kind of stuff. And then just uh, figure out how to put 50,000 pounds of stone onto a frame and things and have it not fall apart, and how to attach wheels, and then how to coordinate with a water feature expert on plumbing and all that kind of stuff. Get all that infrastructure put into the ground ahead of time, and then get the materials. Like a lot of the one in Georgia, there a lot of that materials was local materials. So I'd go to a stone yard, pick out pallets of stone, and then the granite parts are all fabricated in my studio ahead of time. Figure out how to get it all onto pallets, put it on a truck in Barre, Vermont, and have it shipped there.
Mm.
Be there when the truck arrives with forklifts, cranes, different rental equipment to move materials around. And then I have a crew of a couple of 2 or 3 people that I've worked with on now 6 trucks.
Mm.
And one is the head of the Stone Trust in Dummerston, Vermont. And I fly him down, and another guy who's a wall builder from England who's in Nashville. Fly him down, and I bring a crew from Vermont and coordinate those all. Have the water feature people show up on time. It's logistically a lot of again problem solving and a lot of fun to coordinate all that stuff together.
Incredible,
It's
incredible.
yeah.
Stone carving is such a physical, demanding job. How do you manage that? How have you, over the years, been able to keep up that? What's been some of the costs, maybe, doing this type of work?
You mean other than the 3 back surgeries?
Yeah. Oh, geez. No, that's more than enough. Yeah, so
More
demanding.
than enough for a sane person to quit.
Wow, that's incredible.
It is definitely a demanding job. I mean, especially the stone trucks. You're lifting 40,000 pounds off the ground and putting it into place. Fortunately, for that part, I have a crew that helps me on that. But all the work in the studio, everything, it's really difficult work. I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world, and I'd recommend it for anyone who wants a fun thing to do with their life. But it takes its toll. I know stone carvers that are intact after half a century of work. Um, I don't know many of them. Most of them are a little bit crippled. I
No.
About 5 years ago, I realized that 12 months a year of pounding on stone and wood and different things was taking its toll. After my last surgery, which is about 6 years ago, I
Mm.
realized I couldn't do it at that pace anymore. So I work about 6 months in Vermont at a frantic pace, beating my body to death. And then in the winters, I am in Mexico,
Mm.
where it's not as slippery generally,
Yeah.
a tad bit warmer, although it's 41 degrees right now
Oh.
and kind of cloudy and cold. Uh, but I do my clay modeling, which is a little easier on the body here, and all the sort of pre-planning logistics and things, and coordinating and materials acquisition and things like that in the winter. So I have a kind of a break in the toiling. I realized that if at the pace I was at, that I'd be able to probably carve for another 2 or 3 years. And then if I took half of the year and did easier work,
Mm.
easier climate, I might get another decade or so out of it. So we'll see how it goes.
Well, we look forward to upcoming creations for sure. What advice do or would you give young artists interested in pursuing stone carving?
Get a real job. No, no, if I took a vow of poverty 49 years ago, and up until the last 6 or 7 years, it's been exactly that. And I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. Uh, Advice I would give to people, if you're really drawn to making things, if you're just kind of uh, compelled to just make things, just get out and start doing it. There's no, I mean, you can go to school, you can learn from different places. I learned by just doing it on my own, but I would work not really as an apprentice, but just helping out other carvers. I would rough out a sculpture for them and they would finish it, or they would rough out something and I would finish it, or they would hand off a project to me and I would, struggle my way through it. But not any kind of formal training, but working alongside of people that know what they're doing. And just sort of, I always think of it as, when you're watching somebody carve something, you're watching how they think. And without even asking questions, you're picking up what they're doing, how they're processing it. And then if you're at all a creative type, you're going to figure out your own process of it. And if you study with somebody long enough, you pick up their style of doing things. So it's great to go, work with one person for a while, work with another person for a while, and just see how they do things, and then develop your own style on your own on top of that. I'd say there's no sort of real shortcut to just putting chips on the floor. Just go at it, make mistakes. Sculpture is a subtractive thing. So there's times you're just going to go too far, and you don't know how too far is until you've already done that. So do a lot of projects, make a lot of mistakes, learn from each one, and just keep building on that.
That's great advice, Chris. In closing, just a few words about what you're most excited with, projects coming up, looking forward to in the next year or so.
I have a bunch of them. That Academy of Arts and Sciences will get that finished up this year. I have 5 or 6 projects this year, and then starting on another stone truck. And like when I talk to people about stone trucks, I say to them, the criteria for me taking on another project, because I'm at the point now that I can be picky about what I can take and what I can't, because I get a lot of offers to do projects. I'm fortunate in that way, right? At this point, is I say, I'm not going to do the same truck twice. I'm not going to do a simpler one. Each subsequent one has to be more challenging, more fun, more money. Also, just more of a challenge than the one before. More detailed, more. And if you were to show any of the other ones, they definitely get more and more refined as they go along. So the next one, I have a 1950s panel truck in Pennsylvania to do, which goes in 26. And it's enormous, and it's got incredible amounts of details and company logos on it and all kinds of things. So it's just definitely more and more of a challenge each one. Terrific. The other project I'm excited about is I've got a wood carving here in Mexico to do of 2 life-size traditional dancers, which are going to go on the town square in town. And it's incredibly detailed. It's going to be in wood. So I've done the clay models already. They're almost done. They're going to come up and approve them in the next week. And then I bring that back to Vermont, glue up the blocks, bring them down to Mexico, and I would carve it next year. And that's just probably the most detailed piece I've ever done, and one of the most challenging carvings. And every project's got to be more and more and more. Right?
It's a great attitude. Look forward to viewing them when they're done. In closing, how can viewers and others keep in touch with you, find out about what you're involved with? We'll like to hear, and then put it in credits too.
The easiest thing is Instagram. I hate relying on the internet, but it's how I get work these days, and how I gave up a website years ago, and so everything's on I think it's Chris Miller Studio.
Okay.
On Instagram. And I have little I don't know what they call little links at the top for different projects. And so the entire sort of portfolio of what I do and how to contact me is on Instagram. That's easy.
Terrific. Well, we put that in the credits. Thank you. Okay. Well, Chris, unfortunately, we've come to the end of the program. I want to thank you so much for being here. It's been fascinating. The work you do is just outstanding. We didn't even get to some of the sort of public service work that you've done that is particularly appealing too. But that'll be more enticing for people to go to Instagram and find out more about some of your work, as well as keeping in touch. So in closing, just continued success with future endeavors.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
I also want to thank those of you watching for joining us and hope you'll be able to tune in next time.